Yep, that's correct. I've purchased a camper van, and the only reason I'm remotely composed about it is I've gone through the whole roller coaster of should I, shouldn't I, for about 3 or so months. Surprisingly, it was a whole lot less traumatic than I thought it would be, though I have had 2 blips of pain. But the question many of you are probably asking, considering how crazily conservative I am in terms of how I approach my spending, is probably why, or even what the hell. In many ways you can blame the cruise I went on this year, which probably makes 0 sense, right? As how can a swanky all-inclusive cruise to a hot country inspire you to go all rustic and buy a camper van? Well, the first thing I'd say is these sort of camper vans, rustic is relative, right? It's rustic compared to a hotel, but far from rustic compared to a tent. So basically, out of the cruise, I started to question how I could experience the getting away from it all and the mindfulness of the cruise. Perpetually cruising or going on holiday wasn't really an option. That was just a trigger. But it did make me think where I've experienced that sort of mindfulness before. Hiking the Swiss Alps, trekking around the Canadian Rockies, going on hikes in the lakes, walking in the North Yorkshire coastline. It's not really the distance, it's the natural environment. Or in the case of the cruise, being totally disconnected from the internet, which is factor number 2. Look at it this way, I can easily take 5 5-day breaks from work while still leaving enough holidays for random things and Christmas. That effectively is 5 9-day holidays. If we assume for simplicity's sake the period to use these holidays is in May to September, I can be away 9 days for each of those 5 months. I mean, 10 days is about how long we spent in the Canadian Rockies and the Swiss Alps. I mean, that may not be exactly how I do it, right? Because peak summer months and things like that. But when you look at it like that, I mean, to experience 5 months in a year where every 4th week you have a holiday, I mean, that changed how I thought about it. And the crazy thing is, I really need to start planning out some of those big trips during these winter months. Otherwise, the good months will be on me before I know it, and I'll totally waste them. I mean, there's Scotland, the Outer Hebrides, Wales, Cornwall, Ireland, national parks, crazy driving routes like the North Coast 500, the Wild Atlantic Way. I mean, the options just started growing on my list once I ticked over into making the decision. And that's the big holidays though. I mean, I am typing this very script I'm reading now, from a caravan club certified location on a lovely farm with views across the countryside. This could be every weekend. In fact, it's a bit crazy, right? I am talking to you now on New Year's Eve. Got up this morning in my house, looked out the window, bright sunshine, pretty good weather the following day as well on New Year's Day, and I'm thinking, I should be out in the van today. So there is some spontaneity to learn, but I'll get there. I mean, it's a bit hard to use Fridays in the weekday in the winter because of the dark nights and sometimes the way campsites close and things, but then certified locations are a bit more flexible. But we'll see how that goes. But certainly Saturday morning and Sunday could be every weekend. And I get that some people would say a lot of that stuff could be done in your car. And that is true, some of it could, but not all of it. Some of it's too far away, right? And you want to stay over in the night. And also, staying away for the weekend is different than just driving to a walk, doing it and driving back. It is a much more of a contemplative experience. How many times have I said I wish I'd book a cottage for the weekend but didn't because of obsessing over the weather and then wishing I'd booked it? I tell you, it must have happened about 4 or 5 times last year, and it really, really annoyed me. Now I can approach it much more flexibly once I have my spontaneity sorted out. I'm thinking of keeping everything I need. Some of the stuff I need to pack, you know, the non-expensive stuff, I'll keep in the van. Some of it I'll keep on the table I never use in the kitchen, and just boom, go. You know what I mean? None of this figure out what I need to take. Just have it all ready to go, and off I go. The crazy thing is, What do I spend most of my time doing? Which was another clincher. All sorts of stuff that can be done from the van. Writing, reading and watching Netflix. And okay, that writing and reading tends to cover a multitude of activities other than it's books, role-playing game stuff, all sorts of stuff like that. But I can do it all from the van. So it's not like even being away for the weekend stops me doing the stuff I'd normally do while dossing around the house. So in terms of the temporal cost of it all, there's literally no disadvantages. I mean, beyond supplanting some of the big grander international holidays for a while. But I've come to the conclusion after my run of 2 or 3 years of those that I don't think I'm going to miss them. The flexibility is the killer. That was one of the big tipping points in my traumatic purchasing process. It wasn't as bad as I thought, but it had its moments. The idea that it saves you a lot of money, I am not a big supporter of. But I do get some of the arguments. I think when some people make their comparisons, they're assuming they're staying in pretty expensive hotels. But it's more the flexibility. Done right, it's easy to start feeling like the next break is literally always around the corner. Either because you're away on the weekend, or because you're literally away for 9 days every 4th week. I mean, we'll see how it goes with work, weather, and all sorts of stuff. I'm mentally preparing myself for the practicalities being a bit more different than the romance of it. But I have relatives who do this, so it's not like I haven't seen it happen in environments that, shall we say, aren't through the YouTube filter or through social media. So it is practically possible. So on the weekend between Christmas and New Year, I got up on Saturday morning, packed the van, forgot a few things, and drove to 2 reservoirs in the New Yorkshire Dales. I mean, it wasn't the most spectacular of walks, as it was a very civilised walkway that filled up over the course of the day, families, running groups, the whole lot, because it was paved, right? But it did have its moments, and it was quite pretty. The walk wasn't really the point, though. The point was to go to this certified location and see how working the van worked out. And it went really well. There is a bit of a workflow to the van that is pretty simple to do, and I need to work out some of the kinks, but none of them were monumentally frustrating or deal-breaking. There is a few things I forgot, so I think I'll try and source a van bag that is just permanently packed. And as I said, some stuff, because of the cost of them, can just stay in the van, right? So I just pick up a bag or two and off I go. I think I'm going to plan how I do it into zones, such as like equipment in the sleeping zone, equipment that's only needed for outside, equipment for the kitchen, and so on. And then I can use the various storage places in the van and decide what stays in the bag to minimise the amount of moving around. But I think that's going to work. I've got no worries about that, and actually figuring it out is quite enjoyable, right? It's part of the process. The important thing is this. In the morning, when I wake up, or I didn't actually, I came home for various reasons. As I said, spontaneity, I need to learn it. But I could have just drove off, done some more walks, come home in the evening. I could have done those walks, and because the next 2 days weather were okay, I could have just punched in another certified location, rang them up, moved to a totally different national park, and continued my travels. And I still need to get used to that, right? I'm still thinking I've still got too much of a model in my head of a car day trip or an organised holiday. And I need to find out where the blend of those things works for me. But there will be a blend. I'm already starting to think how some of these things may work out. And the flexibility of it is just mind-blowing. And as well as that flexibility, it's about thinking bigger. And this is the exact type of decision I would have never made while married. Actually, it's nothing to do with when I was married. I've always been ridiculously financially conservative, as the long-time watchers of this channel know, to the point it is almost crazy. I mean, it's hard to say why that is. I can only assume a lot of it is driven by the fact that around about the 80s, at some point, we hit it really hard. And you don't really notice this as a kid, or a teenager. You just sort of get on with life, and life is life. But looking back and reflecting on it, it was an amazingly happy time. It wasn't a problem, though I'm sure my parents were going through some stress. But we did have food from the food bank delivered from the church at the time. It was just I've never fully analysed the reason why. Obviously there is a deep-seated, sometimes subconscious element of my thinking that feels I could be destitute tomorrow. But it has to come from somewhere, right? And that is probably it. So this isn't even a decision I'd have made even a year ago. Not only that, it's not a decision I would have been able to make and then feel comfortable with afterwards, like I am now. But I'm even so comfortable with it that even if a lot of it doesn't work out how I think and I need to back off the idea, I don't think it will, because I think things through a lot, as you know. But if I do, I just sell it, right? I'll take a hit, probably less than I think, because the vans tend to hold the value, but that is better than it being the thing I never tried. So it's a case of small, great decisions having just mounted up on top of each other as I've span out of the divorce, providing experience that have inched me towards not so much being a radically different person, but someone who is prepared to be a bit bolder in small and bigger ways. And like I said when discussing the divorce earlier in this series, what I took away from it, and very much only what I took away from it, let's be clear, was we could have been bolder. We reached a point in our life that was quite significant. We had the mortgage paid off, before our mid-40s. I reached that point again a while ago. And the first time I got there, we didn't change anything. In my mind, I speculated on what it meant. I didn't really have to work full time anymore, and all that sort of thing. But we didn't. We just continued on. And I was not prepared to do that this time. So there we go. I'd say until the next chapter, but this is the final chapter. Sadly, we are done. For those who have stuck around for all 19 episodes, I do really appreciate it. Especially the comments, as, views and comments, and you hope subscribers come as an ancillary benefit, are why I do it. My view on why I spend time doing YouTube is simple. It's made me a better person, and all it takes is for the videos to impact just one person in a positive way. And for me, it makes the time worthwhile. It's been a momentous decade, easily one of, well, I'm going to put it, the biggest highs and the lows, right? And I'm certainly different coming out of it compared to who I was going in. I suspect that's different. I suspect that's the same for every decade, but it feels specifically true for this one. Or maybe it's the one I've thought about the most. No, this is the biggest one. Your 40s, man. If you've not got to your 40s yet, they're a big one. May your decade has been as momentous, though hopefully with more of the highs than the lows. You can support me by doing a few simple things. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, certainly post a comment, and let's continue to make small, great changes to make life a story worth telling throughout 2020.